everyone, and welcome to today's LucidWorks webinar. I'm Renee Cohen. I'll be one of your hosts today. And before I introduce my co-host and we kick off today's topic, I have a few quick housekeeping items to run through. So we want you to be interactive today on this webinar. There's a dock of widgets at the bottom of your screen where you can learn about today's speakers. You can download some additional resources that we have for you. And you can submit questions for our Q&A session that we're going to cover at the end of the presentation. And throughout the webinar, the slides are going to advance automatically. But if you want a copy of the slides, you can download a copy in that resources widget down at the bottom. And if you experience any technical problems, go ahead and click on the help widget at the bottom of your screen, or you can type your issue into the Q&A area and we'll see what we can do to help you out. All right, with that out of the way, let's kick off our presentation. 3 critical capabilities for stellar site search. And I'd like to introduce you to my co-host today, William Tseng. William, why don't you come off mute for a second, tell us about your role, how many dogs you have, and let everyone know where in the world you're calling from.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Renee. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is William Tseng. I'm calling out of Chicago, where it snowed on Monday, unfortunately, but we're hopefully looking up for good weather pretty soon. I actually have been at LucidWorks for 7 years, which is the exact same number of dogs that are in my household. My wife is keeping them quiet for now, and hopefully they will stay quiet, but you may hear them every once in a while. Currently, I'm leading solutions engineering here at LucidWorks around our go-to-market products, and been a long-time search evangelist. Actually really excited about today's topic. I actually started my career in developing and maximizing content management systems and utilizing search to get the most out of them. So I really look forward to talking with you all today and hopefully helping you guys understand how to maximize the most out of your website through search. So back to you, Renee.
Thanks, William. And I'm really happy that we get to work on this together and we've been able to work so closely together over the last few years. I'm Renee Cohen. I am the head of marketing here at LucidWorks. I have 1 dog right now and she's more than enough. She's a 5-month-old Rhodesian Ridgeback, and sometimes we think she's like a velociraptor, but she's asleep right now, knock on wood. And I'm joining you all from outside of Philadelphia, where thankfully it did not snow and the weather seems to be turning pretty nice for us here. And as I lead into our topic today, I have another personal anecdote to share with you all. And it's about my age. I fall into the generational category that we would call a geriatric millennial. And what that means is I am not hip enough to keep up with the latest Urban Dictionary terms and dances that are on TikTok, but I do fall within a pretty well-defined pattern of how I use technology, how I consume media, and how I make purchasing decisions. And my Gen X spouse and I joke about this quite a bit because sometimes he and I share some of the same digital habits, so I think that's my geriatric part coming through. But other times I really fall so well into that millennial stereotype. And this was really apparent when I had a recent experience visiting my health insurance company's website. And so I have a little story to share with you all that leads into today's topic about what that experience entailed. So I had an insurance card that was mailed to me, and I noticed, oh, my name is spelled wrong on here. But I kind of ignored it for a while and didn't deal with it until I had to. And I had a claim that got kicked back, and then I realized, oh, I have to contact them and figure out, like, what do I need to do to correct my name in the system? What I was not going to do is I was not going to pick up the phone and call them as my first line of figuring out this information. And so that's where I'm a huge stereotype. And you'll see the stat here that most millennials would prefer to go online to the website, find the answer to their question themselves as their first interaction with an organization. But this is true across all age segments, really. Like, I'm picking on myself a little bit here, but it really is true across all the different age segments. And we found this in a recent survey that LucidWorks conducted last year around customer service trends, that people really do want to be able to go to an app, go to the website, find what they're looking for before they have to take the time to pick up the phone and talk to somebody. And in my case here, after logging into the insurance company's website, I was futzing around for a while with my account profile, and I couldn't find a way to submit a change. So I went looking for the search bar. And it turns out that there was no search bar on this major US insurance company's website, which really shocked me. So when you were logged in as a user on the site, there was no way to search. You had to kind of navigate around. There was a light FAQ, but you couldn't type in an answer to find an answer, type in a question to find an answer to your question. And so as a customer, this was a pretty frustrating experience for me. I felt like it was a giant roadblock and it was friction for something that seemed like a really simple question. What do I do if there's an error in my account profile? So it did send me to the phone after all. And so that wasn't the most satisfying experience for me. And also they had to spend time, their agent's time, to answer my question via the phone. And this type of friction doesn't just impact customer service experiences, it can also impact your revenue. And so if you have a poor search experience on your site, or in this case, like no search experience on your site, you really can lose people before they even become a customer or a constituent, depending on what your business is. So another example, in another instance, I was looking to make a purchasing decision for my company. And here we were looking at landing page optimization tools, and we were evaluating one of them and wanted to know, does it integrate with our marketing automation tool, which was Marketo at the time. And so when I didn't find the answer on the company's website, guess what I did instead? I went to Google, and that is why it's risky business. If you noted that comment on the last slide, it is risky to have a poor search experience on your website, because if you're not solving for content findability on your own site, your users are going to look for the answer somewhere else. And if they can't find it on your site, you're driving them away, and you don't control the narrative anymore when you drive them off your site. So when they start doing research on their own, you begin competing. If they go to Google, you're competing with thousands of other voices who are competing for the attention of your customers. So what appears in the search results could include things like third-party websites, media publications, review sites that might be better optimized to answer the question for your potential customer than yours is. And you could be sending somebody down a Reddit rabbit hole, and you don't control how they're positioning you, or if they're introducing doubt or competitive information that might get the prospect or customer considering an alternative. And speaking of your competitors, they're for sure bidding on keywords that include your brand and product information. And so they're competing for brand impressions. And at worst, they might even be enticing somebody to go and click through to their site and to that competitive site instead of your own. And they also might have organic content that they've created that talks about your brand that might be optimized to show up above your own. And so if you can't effectively answer your potential customers' questions when they're on your site, you are giving up control, and you're sending your prospects down a path that could point them in a different direction to make a different purchasing decision or to work with another institution. So this is a real risk, and your on-site search capabilities really need to keep your customers on your site, retained on that site, engaged with the content on your site, and they need to be confident that your business understands their needs. And so, William, that's why I brought you here today, to be the expert to talk to us about all of this. And so what should our audience be looking for when creating that stellar site search experience?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Renee, for the introduction and all of the analogies that you added to our conversation. So let's jump into it, right? I'm really excited to talk about these topics today in terms of the 3 capabilities for stellar site search. And we're going to lead off with one of probably the notion of relevancy, which is one I hear from, doesn't matter from who, whether it's content managers, people who own search. It's a long-standing concept, right? And in my opinion, it's actually starting to become an overused word when it comes to search, right? And as content owners and content managers, you actually might not really know what that means when someone tells you you've got bad relevancy on your website, right? You've seen that notion of search engine optimization where you've actually spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to win Google's algorithm, get your content high up on Google search, right? But when it comes to your own site, you actually may not be taking advantage of a lot of those things that you've already done, right? Relevance as a definition, it's an overarching umbrella. It's going to actually cover a lot of the capabilities that we talk about today out of the 3 capabilities. And it's defined, really as a complex algorithmic metric, right, that determines what is returned to a user when they make a search, right? And it can also be used as a mechanism actually to talk about returning what's most valuable to that user at the right time, right? And when you're able to do that on your website, right, and you are able to actually not only win the battle, right, of the algorithm within the public search engine, i.e. Google, right, your next goal needs to be able to retain that user on your site, as Renee said, and not let them go, right? So in order to do that, you want to be able to maximize every single touch, right, that happens on your website, right? You don't want them heading back to Google and potentially risk losing them to your competitors, right? So a good site search, right, has the ability to apply the same efforts that you've already done today, right, in winning Google's algorithm and be able to present that back to your own site with your content, right? The concept that when someone abandons your site, whether it's from a poor experience in general or a poor search experience, right, it's known as a bounce, right? And you're probably tracking that within your analytics today, right? And it just simply meant the user didn't find what they're looking for or find the answer that they needed and they left. And that's what you don't want to happen, right? If search doesn't exist on your site today, right, presenting that option to them as a prominent search bar, right, is often that first step in retaining these types of users, right, and preventing them from bouncing off of your site, right? If users see that there is a search bar, they are trained, like Google has trained us correctly that, if we don't quite find what we're looking for on our first try, then we go and search, right? So having a search bar that's easily visible and prominent on your page at least gives you an option to maximize a second touch with that customer before they leave, right? Once you've gotten that touch, though, this is a clear indicator that you need to be able to serve your own content, right, confidently within search, right? And if you're able to serve the right content, this will prevent them from exiting out to their public search engine, right, which would be Google, right? So even just having search on your site, right, allows you to maximize all of your content in a way that's really familiar, right? And on top of that, you're also able to capture analytics that you normally wouldn't get if you were just serving up content through Google, right? The longer that a user stays on your site, the more analytics that you can capture from them in order to, one, help improve your site for your visitor, right? And to be able to take action in terms of what is that user going to be doing next, right? So when I think about relevance, I think of it as an engagement tool, right? This is a cause and effect, right, of relevance of your content becoming a tool for you to utilize, right? And it allows search to be a strong catalyst to converting and retaining your customers, right? So getting that search engine set up with a strong relevance actually shouldn't be a daunting task either, right? You most likely, if you're here today, you may have dug into some of the open source options with Solar Elastic and maybe more developer-centric search engines that require a decent amount of development and power for customization of relevancy, right? But however, as content managers, you guys have already put in the majority of effort to make your own content relevant among those trillions of web pages that exist on Google today, right? You are already beginning to win that fight, right? So because you've already done that, right, the search engine that's going to be strongest for your needs should actually already be pre-tuned to take advantage of everything that you have done so far, right? It should leverage the metadata you create. It should leverage the content that you have, whether it's web pages and presentations, Excel sheets, PDFs, right? All of this content should be readily available and take advantage of all the things that you have done, right? And for you, this allows your primary focus is to, one, be able to continue creating content and create experiences that engage your audience. And second, also to spend more of your time, trying to acquire customers onto your site, right? And that allows you to have confidence that once they're on your website, right, you can utilize a strong, relevant search engine, right, as your primary engagement tool. So what does that mean, though? Like when we start talking about those things, right? Talk about relevancy, which is just a high-level concept, right? What are the things that allow your users to actually engage on your site, right? And that's your user experience, right? A lot of folks who come and talk with me about search, right, say, yeah, our search experience on the site is really plain, right? And I said, sometimes I'm like, that's okay, right? You can have a plain search, right? But people will still use it if you actually return high quality and relevant content, right? Often that's not always the case, right? Someone who has plain search sometimes hasn't put in a lot of effort into making it good, so therefore it's not, right? But take Google as an example, right? If you look at how Google is designed, right, that design has not changed much over the past 15 plus years, right? It's the same design. It's really simple, but it returns high quality and relevant content, right? On the flip side, you could have a highly engaging and eye-catching user interface, but if the relevance is bad, it won't matter, right? They might try once, but they're going to bounce after that if they don't find what they're looking for, right? And the ones who have actually truly mastered this, obviously are the leaders in the field of developing high quality and deploying high quality website search, right? Digital commerce obviously is a huge leader here, as we've seen over the past few years. And obviously Amazon and all of those larger companies out there who have search as a very prominent discovery mechanism on their website, right, are leaders in this space, right? And now, as we continue to evolve over time, right, and as websites and design and things like that continue to evolve to the next level, everyone is going to need a highly engaging, highly relevant search experience in order to be able to compete with everyone else in the field. So what's the first thing that you should probably think about putting on your search page, right? And this would be obviously a search bar in and of itself, right? But what part of that search bar is going to be really important in grabbing your users, right? And this is the first touch, right, in terms of what users see when they start searching, right? And this is also known as autocomplete, right? And you've seen this on your phones, you've seen this on Google, right? This is a critical moment that, as you're typing out your specific search query, right, they start to begin to give you keywords and hints on what you should be able to do, right? But what does this really mean at the end of the day, right? This is the critical moment that gives you the first opportunity to present the right content immediately to your users, right? This first touch is absolutely critical. It should be your best touch, right, with your users on your website, right? So there are two ways of approaching this, and they can be combined, right? When you search on a traditional public search engine, i.e. Google, right, you see a smart type ahead, which would be as keyword oriented, right? And you see different keywords pop up, and it's an assistant tool, right? It helps suggest the next or current keywords in a phrase, right? And this is a great addition to your website. If your content is really numerous and broad, you have a lot of different products, have a lot of varying concepts, right? This is a great thing to add onto your site, right? Because it helps users who may not be familiar with you, right, and are more familiar potentially with Google because it's how they operate, right? It gives them a familiar place to search, right, and to find what they're looking for, right? The other and very strong option, especially for customers who have specifically very targeted content, right, is to deliver instant results potentially alongside traditional keyword-based type ahead, right? And this is actually a really big click saver for your users, right? If they immediately see the content or the page or the website that they're looking for, right, they can go there with a single click, right, rather than having to go to a search page and sift through those results, right? Relevancy, again, plays a very important part in delivering these instant results, right? Because it gets them to what they're looking for faster, right? And gives them confidence that the next time they go back to your website and go back to that search bar, right, that they're going to find what they're looking for, right? So they just keep coming back, right? Google probably has maybe an 80%, I'm going to guess less success rate, right? But that 80% success rate keeps people coming back to them and keeps people coming back and searching for content, right, on their site, right? You want to have those same type of users, right, that continue to come back because they keep finding what they're looking for, right? And that gives you the opportunity to start presenting them more, right? And once you've gotten them hooked, right, it's really critical that you start to think about, what's the next way to get them even more content, right, that keeps them on their website, right? And often users, as they're searching, as they're reading something, they start thinking along different threads and different tangents, right? What's the next best step I should take after reading this, right? What else can I learn, right? Users are often just searching for more answers to their questions, or they might just be really keenly interested in a specific topic at hand, right? So when you start thinking about this, right, this isn't about a user necessarily typing in a query and searching, right? This is us being smart, and it's us being proactive about being able to serve similar and related content, which keeps the user engaged, right? And it often allows them to start digging deeper into a product that you're potentially interested in selling, or even a service that you offer as a company. Right, so this allows mostly what's most important to use a content manager. This allows your content to shine, right? Without your users having to explicitly ask for it, without having to explicitly dig around for it, right? It allows all of the work that you've done in creating this content, to come out in a very positive light. So what's the black hole here, right? And this concept of having to avoid zero results, right? When a user asks and searches for content, right? Within the search ecosystem, a zero result or null result set, right, is apparently a doomsday level event, right? And it results in someone within the content ecosystem panicking, and the user who made the search definitely leaving your site because they didn't find anything, right? And had no opportunity in order to be able to retain what they were looking for. Right, but let's not really panic, right? Because this problem has been around for ages, right? And it actually revolves more around how different people have learned to search on Google, have learned how to ask questions to a search engine, how someone potentially fat-fingered their keyboard and typed something in wrong, or didn't know how to spell something, right? So that's where we just need to help them figure out how to either properly phrase their request or correct their request, right? So there are so many different fallbacks within this whole avoiding zero results, right? And they all have different levels of success, right? And sometimes this is what we see within the search ecosystem, where you might fix one thing and it breaks another, and you might break another thing and it fixes another thing, and it makes it really difficult, right, to figure out how to actually solve this issue. Right. However, as we move, forward with technology, right, modern machine learning and modern deep learning models, right, can actually have a very positive impact on avoiding zero results, right, without either completely broadening your result set too far and it makes it impossible to rank, right, and allows us to narrow down exactly what the user is looking for, right? There are many different options here, but I'm going to focus on three today. The first, which is intent, right? And intent is just a guide, right, so that a search engine can understand the meaning of a request, right? The search engines that can discern some level of intent, right, allows them to bring focus to like specific groups of content, right, that best serves the user's request, right? If someone's looking for help, right, and how they phrase that, could be a lot of different ways, right? How do I do this? What should I do, right? This is usually the a query of a user looking for a guide and advice, right? That might be, on your website, some level of frequently asked questions. It might be your support portal, right? That allows a search engine to be able to present that content directly to that user. Information in a query can be sometimes helpful, and sometimes it can be noise, right? And the issue with information is that if you give a search engine a little bit too much information, right, then you suddenly start getting no results because there's just way too many things that a search engine has to be forced to match, right? Modern day search engines can actually utilize this information, right? And you suddenly start getting no results. I'm sorry, did I get some feedback there? I just wanted to make sure I wasn't hearing anything. Okay, sorry about that. So let me go back, right? So information in a query can be helpful, right? And it sometimes can be noise, right? And rather have that information have to be like a direct match, right? Modern day search engines utilize this information to actually deduce what a user is trying to find, right? It determines whether or not that information is actually important, whether it exists, and whether there's actually something that's related to that information that could be important. Right, and that leads us to our last, which is more around expansion and understanding tight ways of doing things like synonyms, right? And synonyms are actually a very popular feature of search engines that have been around forever, right? You are able to provide a map that says, Delta, right, or COVID is also equal to coronavirus, is also equal to SARS, to Omicron, et cetera, right? And when you start doing this, you start to expand out what the search engine can look for, but that also introduces potentially other things that don't particularly match. So with some of the newer linguistic tools that are in our pocket today, right, you can actually train a search engine to understand that delta in this scenario means COVID, coronavirus, Omicron, as opposed to, the Greek representation, right, of a word, right? So understand kind of in the long run that zero results, right, can absolutely halt the user's progress in their track, and you can lose all momentum with them, right? But to tweak a search engine at its core to just avoid zero results isn't always a great trade-off, right? To make sure that we're analyzing, as a good search engine, it should handle that for you, right? And it gives you the tools to create the right optimal experience for your users without having to be a developer-oriented tool. And in order to do that, right, the goal is that you should have tools that are easy for you to optimize your user's experience, right? So a lot of content managers who have deployed search, they found that they actually have very little action that they can take personally, right, to tweak results as they see fit, right? Often these start as requests. They get trapped in like IT backlogs and development resources that don't have time to go do it, right? So they either never get fixed or they get fixed way too late, right? So a search engine platform should come with the right tools for content managers that allow them to bring their best ideas and take action as quickly as possible, right? It should be focused around, what content managers do best, which is presenting engaging content on their website. And it should also be able to utilize things like analytics in order to help you make the best decision, right? But even starting off, right, let's think about, how do you get data into a search engine, right? So as you've set up your website in the past, right, a search engine needs to be able to acquire data from your website, right? And that's often done through a crawler. And if obviously Google will sift through and crawl through your website, and it'll hit it every once in a while, and it'll pull in whatever it can, right? So this concept applies to other third-party search engines as well. However, the content manager now should have more control over how this is structured, right? How often crawls need to be scheduled to run, right? Allows content managers to have their best and newest content always available at a touch of a button. Whenever you've published your content, right, you can always go kick off a search crawl, and it'll go recrawl your site and find your new content. Or if you remove content, it will remove content from the search engine so it's no longer findable, right? Content managers should also be able to choose how they want their search structured, right? And this allows you to group certain results together, such as put all your blogs in one place, videos in one place, and ebooks, so that when users are potentially searching for something like blogs and only looking for blogs, you can actually focus their attention and the content and relevancy directly to that specific subset of content, right? Or you can also group something like your website's hierarchy together so that when a user searches within a site-specific hierarchy, right, they're limited to what they can find on that specific hierarchy, or they can go up it and figure out, what else they might be looking for within the entire scope of the website, right? This level of control of content allows you to have discrete and specific control over how content should be segmented, right? And how you want to define that user journey wherever they are on your specific website. So once all of that content is structured, right, there are a lot of things, easy buttons that search engines should be able to take advantage of that content managers have already created, right? And the big one is around re-leveraging all of the efforts that you've already put in to winning at Google, right? And Google essentially has already trained us, like, what the standards of a website should look like if you want to survive out in their world, right? A good third-party search engine should be able to re-leverage all of this information and go further with it, right? The big one here is probably things like meta tags and other structured metadata that you can utilize on your site structure, right? For both faceting and filtering, for creating page details, for being able to add attributes to your specific content, right? It can also be utilized for relevancy and to add additional details about your content to really make it visually appealing and easy for your users to navigate and decipher whether or not they're looking at the right thing. And finally, for my last slide in this section, there are just easy buttons that allow content managers to have full control over how search content is displayed and how it shows, right? There are three primary functions that each content manager really should have over search results, and let's just quickly go over those. The first is block, right? And when I talk to a lot of customers, it's always interesting that when I hear block come out of their mouths first, because I always figure, oh, you want to be able to move things up and down, and you want to be able to organize things. And often customers just want to remove something that doesn't belong, right? And that's either because the crawler picked up something and it just happened to spider down one level too low or picked up something extra, right? But they just don't want to see it within the search results for a specific query or within their search results set as well, right? And this is a great function to have. It's fast and allows you to be able to make quick changes to how the results show up. And you can do that without having to wait for either another data acquisition cycle where you might want to exclude that specific piece of content from being indexed. But it allows you to quickly remove that, ad hoc if necessary, right? Boost is a really good function, and it allows you to just move your desired results to the top for a specific search query, right? And often when content managers look at analytics, right, on what the top searches are, this is a really good opportunity to spend some time to optimize your search results on what's most popular, right? What your users are actually looking at the most, right? It allows you to have a spot where you can really highly engage with what the most popular searches are, right? And you can actually probably see both Boost and Block come into play here when it comes to optimizing that experience. And finally, the final function is promote, right? So if you think about an ad on Google, right, just a simple function that allows content managers to basically mark specific content to be displayed prominently on the search results page, right? It allows you to, if you want to call an ad, you can, right? And it draws attention to that content. And if it's an event or an important notice, either something went down, you have a new release, you have a new product, right? It allows you to prioritize the information that you want to draw your users' eyes to. So I hope that you've all enjoyed listening to those three critical capabilities of website search, and I thank you for your time and attention. I'll turn it back over to Renee for her to introduce connected search.
Great. And we're going to wrap up here in just a couple minutes and get to, I saw some questions coming in through the Q&A chat. If you've got more, feel free to put them in there because we're going to spend a little bit of time answering those questions. But just wrapping up here before we get into the Q&A, I wanted to share a relevant offering that we have available to you that really pays off everything that William was talking about and more. And a couple months back, some of you may have heard that LucidWorks, we made a big announcement, and we announced our new search as a service platform called Springboard. And the first application on that platform is Connected Search, which is now available for early access participants. And we're going to talk a little bit about Connected Search and how it can help you achieve this stellar site search experience on your site and what is available for those who qualify for the early access program. And some of you, I think I checked in the audience. I see that some of you already know and are familiar with who LucidWorks is, so I won't spend a ton of time on this slide here. But for those of you who don't know, we have been a search leader for a decade plus, and we've been solving search use cases across some of the hardest search use cases, honestly, across a myriad of use cases. So there's e-commerce, internal workplace search, customer service, and of course, site search, which we're talking about here today. And this is just a sampling of some of our customers, but you can go onto our website and read more customer stories like these on our site and hear how they've achieved success with LucidWorks in solving their search problems. But our newest offering, spending just a few minutes on this, our newest offering is Connected Search, and it was purpose-built to make search easy. And it provides all of the best practices and the scalability that we have learned for over a decade of implementing these search solutions in some of the hardest use cases, but it delivers this out of the box quickly. And it's an easy to use application. It's built so that anybody on your team can manage that search experience and things like what William was talking about, being able to optimize that search experience without having to be a developer or a search expert, are baked right into the application. And so these are some of the tenets that it was built on, but speed, high performance of indexing and of the results being returned so that your users are getting like an instant return of their results when they're searching. That's about creating the best possible user experience to keep them on your site. And out of the box relevancy, which we spoke a lot about the importance of relevancy in your search platform and your search solution. That relevancy continues over time, and we give you guided workflows and suggestions about how to best set up and manage your search experience on your site to continue to optimize the user experience and the relevancy over time. And we provide analytics and dashboards so you can see how you're performing and that you can make some adjustments right from within the platform to continue to see those numbers and those trends improve over time. And finally, there is no reliance. It's built so that you don't have to rely on IT or a dev team for ongoing support and maintenance in adjusting and tuning the search relevance. And so if you do qualify for our early access program, and I'll share with you on our final slide how you can sign up, it's no cost, low risk trial for you for 3 months during our early access period. And during that time, you're going to be the first person among the first people to see and use new features as they're rolled out. So you'll get an insight into our roadmap. You'll get input into our roadmap with our product team. And you'll get a high touch experience with our customer success team as we set you up for success, get it up and running on your site, and we learn about what's working for you, and we can work with you on how to best achieve your outcomes. And after that 3-month trial program ends, you'll be able to lock in early access pricing to continue on using the new application Connected Search as well. And so if you're interested, head on over to our Connected Search page, which is at the URL that's listed here. And you can learn more and you can sign up there, and we'll be in touch. But now I am going to go ahead and jump in to our Q&A. And William, I know a couple of these questions as I'm scrolling through look like you would be a better fit. I'm going to start answering the first one that I see, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. So the first question says, do you have any stats on how many people issue long tail searches? Gut feel is that most people don't take the time. And actually, I think the data that we have actually shows that the trend is really kind of the opposite, is that users have really been conditioned to do more long tail, and it's somewhere upwards of like 70%. And definitions wise, short tail is like 1 or 2 words. Anything more, once you start adding 3, 4, 5, starts turning into a long tail query. But I think the data that I saw is like it's more than 50% is what folks are used to doing these days. But do you have anything else to add on that, William?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've seen both, right, in terms of whether it's short or long. And I think it really depends on, who your audience is that you're promoting to, right, and who's actually coming and visiting your site. There was one customer that I worked with that, wanted to optimize around long tail queries, but they only had 2%, right, of their queries were, let's say, greater than 2 to 3 keywords, right? So it really didn't make a whole lot of sense to optimize those. But there's also customers I work with where, like you said, it's around 70%, right? So it's always good just to check your own analytics, right, to see kind of what type of customers you're serving and how to best optimize for them specifically.
Great. Thank you. Another question I see here, William, and I think you and I have talked about this, even fairly recently, because this is a question that comes up quite a bit. I manage a site with multiple domains. Can you create unified search with multiple domains?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and depending on what you might be using today, right, it might be difficult to be combining multiple domains together. But this is one of the powers of having a search engine that can do, essentially go and index multiple domains, right, and pull those like potentially content that might be the same across those domains into, let's say, one particular segment, right? It's absolutely possible.
Another one here, so you mentioned machine learning. Can you talk more about machine learning and search, and how do I add it to my site?
That's a really interesting question. Machine learning today has almost become synonymous with search, which is, kind of interesting as, I've been in search for almost over 12 years now. Before it was completely like you do everything in the search engine and ignore kind of some of the other things that are happening. And now it's, machine learning, search, and even other tools have to now coincide and work together, right? So um, machine learning overall is both very important and not very important to your search. And I'm going to kind of talk about why, right? So it's not that important to add machine learning to your search for the sake of having machine learning in your search, right? It is important that, as you're analyzing and trying to figure out how to solve specific problems, right, to figure out, is it worth either the time or the hassle to add, an ad hoc machine learning to your search, or, does the product that you have either chosen do that already, right? So, the goal is that you want to use machine learning to be solving very specific issues that you might be seeing with search. But it's also not something that is an absolute necessity.
Great. Actually, no, these are two different questions, so I thought it was the same. But one that just popped in, and then I have a follow-up that's somewhat related. So can you talk about search and handling multi-language or language with specific language characters?
Yes. So there are a lot of different interesting ways of handling multi-language, and I would call them tiers, right, in terms of handling multi-language. So most search engines out of the box should be able to handle multi-language and language-specific characters if they are, let's say, exact matches, right? So if your content matches up perfectly with the keyword, then it should be something that can be returned. There are more advanced things, obviously, as we think about things like Chinese, Korean, Japanese, or common CJK, even as well as, other languages like Portuguese and Spanish, right, where they're either slang or specific phrases, just very similar to English, right, in some of the examples that I've shared where, you might have some variance, right? There are some advanced kind of language packs that can be utilized to help handle those specific cases. Right. So search can and should handle, let's say, the most specific character matches, but it depends on how deep you want to go, right? If, let's say, your primary audience is served in, let's say, French, right, then you definitely want to consider potentially adding an advanced language pack that would help handle some of the more unique cases within the French language.
Mm-hmm. Great. And then I have a question about training models. So this maybe goes back a little bit to the machine learning question, but how do I train models on my company's content and terminology? Which, we've got at Lucidworks a couple of different solutions, and some that are a little bit more turnkey out of the box, like connected search that we talked about, and some others as well. So what's your thoughts on that question, considering what we talked about here today, William?
Sure. There's twofold things that I think about when it comes to training models, right? One is, what are you trying to solve with said model, right? So there are a lot of models that stay around, like dense vector models, which actually fairly straightforward to train. Your goal is to actually throw out as much content as humanly possible with, maybe a couple dimensions, and, go after and train that, right, on your specific company's content and your terminology, right? It can train around that. Maybe a slight disadvantage around that is that you need quite a bit of content and terminology in order to be able to make that highly effective. I also spoke with a data scientist not too long ago who said that regex happens to be one of the best ways of getting people kicked off in terms of solving problems within the machine learning space. And I'm not sure if that's going to exactly solve the issue that you have, but you can certainly feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to have a longer conversation about what type of models are you thinking about using, and what business problems are you trying to solve with those said models.
Great. I think we have time. I'm going to run through two more questions here real quick. So first one, does it matter what CMS we're using?
No, not at all. There are probably some cases, right? So let's talk about things that exist within your public domain, right? Which are things that Google can pick up, right? So if your CMS is publishing pages out into the web that Google can pick up, then it definitely does not matter what CMS you use. Mm-hmm. As I think most CMSs, have, we call it a push mechanism to push content into a search index, right? Which is a different type of mechanism. In that case, it might matter what CMS you use, depending on what search engine that you choose. But right now, in terms of our focus, right, with connected search as a product, we are specifically focused on the content that we can get to, right, on the web. We are adding some other functionality that allows us to get to content that might be hidden either behind a CMS published firewall, or even content that might exist in a database, for example.
And the last one, there were a couple questions that came in about pricing. And so we do have pricing. So for those of you who've asked, we're going to follow up with you on what the pricing is. But someone asked a little bit more specific. Is it for the new SaaS offering? Is it per seat? Is it per search? Is it per the total content that's being indexed, or a combination? And so, William, I'll let you answer this last one as well. Just at a high level, can you just talk through how the pricing works, and then we can follow up with some specifics to those who asked?
Yeah. So pricing is done on a tier-based basis. That's tier-based basis, interesting way of saying that. But it's based on tiers. So depending on what your highest tier is, so there's two things that we look at, is the number of records that you have and the number of requests that you get, right, across that. So, and you can usually at least have a decent idea of your records by how many pages your CMS publishes and decent number of requests if, let's say, you're tracking, if you have search today and you're tracking number of search requests within something like Google Analytics or Omniture, right? But we look at the highest numbers. So let's say, for example, you have 1 million documents that you're trying, or 1 million records that you're trying to index, right? That'll come at that tier with a specific number of requests, right, that you can send to the system. And if you need more requests, then you would move up a tier to be able to support more requests over a yearly basis.
Yep. Great. All right. That's it for today. So I want to thank everybody again who took the time out of your day to join us. And we'll be following up with some of you who asked questions if we didn't get to answering your question. And I hope you all have a wonderful day and a good rest of your week.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.